Okay, so my name's Kyle Petitt. For those of you that don't know me, um, I bribed and bullied my way into becoming the director of education for the Real Military Division. Hi, Susan. And here I am. So this is actually my first time to be able to address a few people at large. And this is so when we talk about in the Real Military Division, what is like our purpose and what are we trying to do? It's really like we're trying to take advantage of these situations to make sure that we are the best. Because has anybody sent a referral to an agent just because they were in some military division and it turns out that that agent was subpar? Yeah, it happens. And we want to make sure that the quality of the agents that are in the Real Military Division, that we understand the nuance. So I'm going to give you just a quick background of who I am, but more importantly, why I got into the business and how I ended up kind of in this role and why I'm so passionate about the VA loan. So Air Force background, I was in Air Force Special Operations for 9 years. I flew AC-130 gunships. I lived down in Clovis, New Mexico, that dark, shadowy place. You must never go there. And my entire career was down there. Um, that is also where I met my wife. We flew gunships together. We went to war and did things, and we were like, "Hey, this is fun. You're nice. You're neat." Decided to get married. We actually just got married 2 months ago. We've been together for about 6 years. So when I was down there, when I first commissioned. I went to flight school in Pensacola, moved out to New Mexico, and as most young lieutenants do, I just got a house with some other lieutenants, and we were just renting it like a bunch of idiots. And we were just three of us splitting this like relatively decent house. And then at one point we were like, oh, maybe we should split the rent on this like giant house. It's Clovis, so like there's not that many really nice houses, but we wanted to like upgrade our lives. Well, as the military story goes, I got married back then, and me and my wife at the time like decided to buy a house. And I didn't know anything about buying a house. So I had an agent and we were driving around, found this house on the golf course. It was sweet. It was like $150,000 right on like the 18th hole, which you can only do in places like Clovis. And we ended up buying the house. And I remember being like, what? That was like so easy. That was so dumb. And then I started realizing that was like my first indication that this is like 2016. And I was like, why did I not just buy a house and live with the same dudes and have them pay my rent? But that was legitimately like the extent of my thought process on that. Fast forward a couple years, not divorced, oops. And then 2020, 2021, all that stuff happens, right? Where the market, what's up, Joe? Oh my God. So 2021 starts kind of happening and rates change. But I don't know if you know this, but the math on a $150,000 house, like whether you're at 4% or 2.5%, is like, it's not that big of a difference, right? But I knew that everyone was refinancing, and that was the only thing that I knew in my head. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll refinance. That sounds like a great idea. So I refinanced, kept it in the VA loan, which I'm going to address later because I think that that was a not good plan. And then still didn't really think anything of it. I was like, sweet, my payment's like $150 less a month or $200 less a month, like whoop-de-doo. Um, then was finishing up my last deployment, 2021. I was flying gunships over Kabul during the Afghanistan retrograde or whatever we want to call it. And that was kind of when I was like, all right, I think I'm done with this. Lauren had moved up here to Colorado Springs, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to like stay down in New Mexico while she's up there. And, we're not going to do this distance thing. That doesn't make any sense. So I decided to get into real estate. I had interest in it, blah, 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 blah. But when I really started learning about it, this is the point of this whole story. When I really started learning about it, that was when I started realizing that I was so mad that my realtor did not show up to my house and bang on my door and say, Kyle, God damn it, you are going to buy another house right now in 2021. And when you refinance, you're going to refinance out of the VA loan so you can clear up all that eligibility. Alyssa, do you have a question?
Difference of opinion, but it depends on whether or not that makes sense for you. But I'm
And
always
I'll
like,
tell you why. I'll tell you
don't
why.
give blanket
Yep.
advice to
No,
that
I
because you
know.
can
No, I know. I
use
know.
it
We'll get
twice.
to it.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
That's all my
So,
face was.
so the point was that there was no strategy involved. And what I have seen is that because it's not their profession, is that most people that are, especially that are active duty, they are not thinking about the strategy of how to build wealth, how to maximize the use of their VA loan. They're just thinking, I know that I can use the VA loan, I can put zero down, and I can buy a house, and I will use my BAH, and that will cover the cost of my house. Thumbs up, and then I'll move in 3 years, hopefully have some appreciation, which, like, in half the markets where bases are, you're not going to have any appreciation anyway. But so that was when I was like, oh, I want to make sure that just at least my friends have some idea of some strategy so that when they go forward, they can uh, maybe be a little bit better off than I was, which I was not in a bad position, right? So, what's up, Roland? Hi, everybody, for joining in. So, okay, so I ended up writing a book. I wrote a book called the Your VA Loan Blueprint. It's on Barnes and Nobles. What's up? I mostly did it because I knew it was a good lead magnet, and you can read it if you want. It's free. It's like an ebook, right? It took me 4 or 5, 6 months to write. As an aside, it has been brilliant to use as a lead magnet, to use as something to offer as, man, especially when I was young in the business and brand new, it was like a great way to like just have immediate credibility. So, first note is if you are struggling to have credibility or you're trying to figure out a way to like continue to reach out to people, I will literally just like it's on the QR code on my business cards. I'll reach out to people and and just send them the link and I'll be like, hey, I've got because you're my homie. This is a free link. The book is actually just free on Barnes and Nobles. So, but I'll tell them this is a free link for all my friends. So if you want to um, download this, it's super easy. It is exactly like I talk. I effectively dictated the book. Um, and what I covered in the book is not the VA loan handbook because that's boring. And anybody can look up the VA loan handbook. But what I wanted to talk about was these conversations of like the myth busting, the strategy, the things to think about when we are advising our clients. Now I'm going to caveat that with the reason like people like Alyssa exist. Alyssa, for those of you that joined a little bit later, is an actual lender. So much more qualified than I am ultimately. But like, I will at least help them understand the basics. But then I want to connect them with a lender that understands the VA loan. So if you're using a lender that doesn't really understand the VA loan, and there's some really easy questions that you can ask them to find out if they do or not. If they don't understand it, use a different lender because there's so much nuance in the VA loan. And if you want to have a successful transaction, and if you don't have one, holler, hit up Alyssa. Alyssa, are you licensed everywhere or are you just in North Carolina?
I'm licensed in most of the states with Real is. I don't know how many of you know.
Sweet.
Also, One Real has mortgage loan officers. We're growing into every state. So check workplace. Also, I know people everywhere. The VA lender community gets small because we all hate like how terrible people can be because they love what the leads can do for you, but they hate knowing the things. So small community, we all know each other. If you need somebody, I'll find you somewhere.
Well, that's totally true. And it's also like, just like in business, when you meet other realtors and MLOs, is they're all like, I live in Colorado Springs. Contrary to what my little name tag says, I am not Renee and I'm not in San Antonio. I live in Colorado Springs. There's 5 military bases here. And so, of course, everyone's like, I just really want to service, and take care of our vets. I'm like, no, you don't. You just understand that it's a source of enormous amounts of business because people are PCSing in and out, right? But we want to help protect our homies that served with us, especially like people that are close friends. So, all that to be said, if we are tracking everything that's going, if everything makes sense so far, drop like a 1. I hate Zooms. Ultimately, I think everybody does because it's hard to actually get interaction. So first off, thank you everybody for actually having your cameras on. I super appreciate it. I won't feel bad if you do need to, black out your screen and eat a snack or something like that. You do whatever you want. But thank you for being here. Okay, I want to talk about, I'm going to go back to, I think I'll just start with my home, that one that I bought. And again, what we say here is not blanket advice. It's just a way of thinking about these deals and processes, maybe a little bit not like the norm, which, like we said, the norm is I'm just going to buy a house and then I'm going to sell it in PCS. And then I'm going to buy another house and I'm going to sell it in PCS. Like if somebody wants strategy, then I'm just going to tell first off the anecdote of my house when I didn't know any better. So I said I bought a $150,000 home. I refinanced from 4.2 to 2.5, I think is where it was. So great, saved a couple $100. And then I ended up doing is I decided to keep the house because when I moved in 2022, I looked on the rental market in my city. And because the housing market was bananas, there was literally 4 other rentals available in the entire city. So that was like a no-brainer that I could easily ask for the top margin of rent outside of what I thought was feasible. So it was kind of nonsense, but we did it. I could have sold the house and made significantly more money because it also happened to be May of 2022, which was like peak season for selling, as you guys know, in the market. So I ended up holding on to the house. And one of the reasons that I don't regret necessarily not refinancing out of the VA loan, but one of the reasons why it occurred to me was because one of the biggest myths and the biggest questions is, can I use my VA loan more than once? Victoria, can I use it more than once?
Absolutely.
Okay, can you have more than one out at a time? So if I had, I had that house in New Mexico, and now I'm moving up to Colorado, and in my head, I'm like, I'm going to just go buy a house in Colorado. Can I do that?
That I'm not sure. Maybe you can. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
that's okay. This is why we're here. I didn't know
Right.
either, so don't feel bad at all. For those of you, I'm not picking on Victoria. She's on Skillbridge. She's working on her license right now. She's down in El Paso, so follow. She's posting all her stuff on Instagram and holding herself accountable to getting her license and doing all kinds of good stuff. So we can definitely continue to show support for her. So I didn't know either, and then I was like, oh yeah, I can. And in my head, I was like, I'm just gonna move to Colorado, buy another house. My girlfriend or my wife, but she was my girlfriend at the time, was already living up here. She had a house. And I was like, I'm just gonna move up there and I'm gonna buy another house. And that's an easy way that I can just add to my portfolio. Well, there's a couple problems there. Number one is yes, you can. I'm gonna try a little screen share and I'm gonna, this might not work, but we're gonna freaking send it. It's going to go away from my face and it's going to go to an orange screen. Oh my God. Did that work? Do you see an orange screen? Thumbs up. Okay, sweet. So I'm a little bit more visual. So I bought that house for $150,000. Home, we're going to do home number 1. Okay. So before I even get to this one, before I bought this house, how much house could I have bought? How much could I spend on a house with my VA loan if I had never used it before? Does anybody know?
What year did you talking about? What year did you buy the house?
It was 2016.
2016. You could have spent whatever the conforming loan limit was.
Yep. What about now?
If you have no other outstanding, there's no limit. You can buy a $5 million house.
No limit. Alyssa, what's the biggest VA loan you've ever serviced?
2.3.
2.3 million. That's crazy. So obviously you have to qualify for it, right? It's not like we're just going to give you a 0 down on some house. Like you still have to qualify for the home. You still have to have the DTI, but some people have, like, this scenario can work out for them. But what happens when now I have house number 1, I took out a loan for 150,000. Now what's the math? Now how much can I buy? And we're going to say, without, like, still using the VA loan to its max extent possible, meaning we're not putting any money down. Roland, I'm just going to call him people. It's okay. And it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah, so that what they'll do is they'll take whatever your entitlement is that you have left.
Yep.
And then they'll make a calculation. If you have enough entitlement left to purchase another home, then you'll get in with 0 down payment. If you don't, you could still use your VA loan, but you will have to pay a portion. And that's something that, like, Alyssa, any good lender will be able to put together.
Killer. Thank you. Perfect. So what that is called is the VA county loan limit. Now, broad brushstroke, the VA county loan limit almost everywhere in the United States is $766,550. Okay. Now you go to places like New York, Boston, LA, Southern California, Northern California, obviously, like, those numbers change. Hawaii, the number changes, obviously. And so you might I think LA is like, it's like 1.1 million or something like that. So it definitely depends on where you are. So make sure that where you're doing business, exactly. And all you type in is VA County Loan Limit 2024, San Antonio, Albuquerque, wherever you are. And then it will just pop up that number. So for me, even in Colorado Springs, it's $766,550,000. Okay. So now this is not perfect math, by the way. There's a little bit more nuance in this. So Alyssa, please don't cut my head off. But for simplicity's sake, that means, man, I am doing public math and I am not ashamed. That means that I have effectively $616,000 of entitlement remaining. So if I buy a house for, I'm going to say a little bit less than or equal to that remaining entitlement, I can still do 0 down. Now, what if I buy, and Roland was just alluding to this, but what if I buy an $800,000 house?
If that's your only one, then you have no more entitlement left. So you could not use bonus entitlement to buy a second home.
So let's do this. Let's say that I still have, I have my $150,000 house in New Mexico. And now I want to move to Colorado and buy an $800,000 house.
You got to bring 25% of the difference.
Yes.
Because it's 25%. 25% is the guarantee that the VA makes. So you got to bring 25% of the difference.
All right. Now I'm going to not public math, but I am going to calculator math. So we got 800,000 minus, I'm just going to round it and say 616,000. The difference is 184,000. And then you have to bring 25% of that, which is 46,000 as a down payment. Vic, does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to calculate it myself.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Sweet. So before we move on, any questions about this? Does this make sense to everybody? I'm going to ask again for the one in the chat.
I have a question.
Who's that?
Hey, it's Kelly.
Kelly, hi.
Hey, so this technically would put you over the entitlement limit, right? So if you're only having to pay 25% of the difference for the down payment, then are they covering the difference? They're going above the entitlement limit because of this?
Alyssa, I'm going to let you answer this. The answer is yes, but Alyssa, I'm going to let you answer it.
Yes, but the VA loan works very different in the fact that the VA guarantees, which is different than FHA and conventional. the 25% of the loan amount, which means that loan lenders can't lose that because the VA guarantees it. And so instead of the VA guaranteeing it, the difference of the entitlement is that 25%. The veteran is guaranteeing it with their down payment. Does that make sense? And that's why they can go up.
Well, if the veteran is only paying 25% of the difference, I guess maybe you answered this, but I'm not understanding that the rest is still over the entitlement limit. So is the lender, so then is the loan more than what they're entitled to?
No, so their loan is, because the entitlement works is technically like the math he didn't explain is the 25%. That's actually the way it should be, but the VA likes to complicate things for no reason. But so technically kind of think about the VA is guaranteeing a 25% down payment for the veteran. That's what they're entitled to, a 25% down payment. When they run out of entitlement and they still have some entitlement left, they're responsible for that difference of that 25%. So they're getting that. Think of it as a second, but it's not a second. Like it's kind of like down payment assistance up 25%, but it's not in that same sense of what we know as.
So here's the way I would look at it, and I think my wife would explain it this way. As an underwriter, is that the VA is going to guarantee that 616,550, 25% of that 616,550, because that's the amount of eligibility left. And then it's up to the veteran purchasing to do 25% of the difference of that to guarantee that side of it. Okay, quote unquote, guarantee that part of it that's above what is left in eligibility that the VA can no longer cover. So the lender is still getting 25% of the total. It's just split up between what is left on eligibility and what is not.
Okay, I think I need to let this soak in for a minute because I'm thinking like you have to pay cash for the difference, but you're saying you don't.
Well, no, you need that cash. You do need cash. The 25% is your cash difference. It's basically like your down payment. Like she just said, it is a down payment difference. You're going to have to bring 25% of that $46,000 to the table as a down payment, which is the 25% that's going to be quote unquote like the guarantee that's above the guarantee that the VA can cover because you're now past your eligibility loan.
Right, but you don't have to bring more than 25%. So the 184 down at the bottom is the difference. And the buyer only has to bring 46. So what happens to the rest of the 140?
Well, they're qualified for it. It's a part of the loan. It's a part of the loan as a whole.
Okay, so it goes above the eligibility.
Yeah, so they are eligible. They have qualified for an $800,000 home, right? But they only have enough eligibility to cover $616,550. Well, the VA is going to guarantee 25% of what there's left, which is at $616,550. Now the veteran is responsible to quote unquote guarantee 25% of the difference of $616,550 of the 800, which is 184. That's that $46,000 you got to bring to the table as a down payment for closing that loan.
I stole this from Melissa, but this is what she put in the chat. So, I also, who was just speaking? I couldn't even see.
Sorry, it's Andy Rose. I'm driving. I'm almost home, so I can be on my.
Okay, cool. It just wasn't populating. No, you're totally fine. I appreciate you weighing in. Okay, so Alyssa and Andy might hate me for what I'm about to say. I neither know nor care to really understand the intricacies of the VA and like the guarantee nonsense and like, because I don't really get it, nor do I care. That has never affected my ability to do business. All I know is that there is a VA county loan limit. And if you have no loans out, you can take out as big of a loan as you qualify for. And if you have one out, then you need to look up your VA county loan limit. And then you basically just do really simple math. Now that'll get you in the ballpark, right? But your lender is really obviously going to be your teammate here and letting you know like, okay, I want to buy an $800,000 house. How do we go about this? And then but that'll get you in the ballpark to understand, like, I have about 616 left. Anything over that, I'm going to be responsible for 25% of the difference. So in another like less weird scenario, or not less weird, but like less aggressive, like what if you wanted to do like a $650K purchase price? Then your difference there is what, like $34,000. So now you're paying 25% of 34,000, which is what, 12K? Yeah. It's roughly 12K for a down payment, right? In this scenario, that really makes sense, because if you look at, like, if you compare a VA loan versus like a conventional loan, now you're getting to this house and only having to put down 12,000. You're getting a better interest rate. You have all the benefits of the VA loan. But if you were to do this conventional, like, minimum is 3%. Head nod. Yes. Okay. So we'll call that 19,000, and you're still going to have PMI. So you're putting down more money, and you're going to have private mortgage insurance. So that's another case where this is still like incredibly beneficial, right? And then when we go back up, actually, is it okay if I erase this? Can I get thumbs up? Okay, I'm going to erase this because I just want to put down, and we can just blurt these out. Because again, this goes to like the strategy and why would we use the VA loan over something else? Because Reagan posted something recently that it's like the amount of people that are eligible for the VA loan and then don't use it, it's mind boggling. It's like, it's angering. And a lot of them don't use it because they just don't know, or they don't understand that it's that much better, which is insane. So let's real quick. Yes, Alyssa, reason, huge number. I can't count that high. Why you need a lender partner who is solid with VA. Yes, 100%. Heart that in the chat. So let's talk about, and we can just blurt these out, but what are like we're going to call it 4 to 6 benefits of the VA loan? Because we also have to understand this to understand how to strategize with our people. So we've already said the big one that everybody in the world knows, 0 down. And then I mentioned no PMI, right? Which can be, oh my God, that could be $200 a month. It could be $450 a month, right? That could be like all over the place. So no PMI is a huge one. What's another major benefit of the VA loan?
I believe there's
Rate.
no credit or like required credit check or credit score.
So technically, no minimum credit score. And I see Rick said in the chat, you're going to have a better interest rate. There's an app on your phone. If you don't have it, I highly, highly, highly recommend downloading Mortgage News Daily. Because like you can just open that up. It's not perfect, right? But like that's kind of like is tracking the trends. I wish I could like also show my face here. This is awkward. But, and you can see like today what it says is 30-year fixed 6.55, 30-year VA 6.12. And that's just, I think the word is par, right? That is just like the big thing. That's not necessarily exactly what you're going to get, but you can see there's like a 0.5 point difference between those two numbers. That's crazy. And sometimes that gap is even bigger. What else we got? Yes, 100% Alyssa. Don't forget Earl. Who said that? John, can you give us like 2 or 3 sentences about Earl?
Streamline refinance with bare minimum, just as long as Alyssa, you can help me out here with this, but my lenders typically say as long as you can fog a mirror and you're under your VA, you can refinance.
So the rule on the lending side is they have to save 0.5% and recoup their closing costs within 36 months, which means saving enough monthly to pay back all the closing costs that they would have to pay. And then it's no credit qualifying unless you're changing someone from a loan, which means no, most of the time you have to have a credit pull for most lenders, but it means you don't have to do income docs. You don't have to have an appraisal. And it's
And then the
typically
monthly minimum requirement after the purchase is that, what, 6 months and a day? Or is
yeah,
that-
210.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. What other benefits? Oh, you can see me? Oh yeah, this is good.
Limits on closing cost.
Can you explain that one?
So if lenders are doing a origination fee or anything like that, like the origination fee is maxed out at 1%. Most lenders get away with this by doing borrower paid comp or lender paid comp instead of borrower paid comp of where it's baked into the interest rate, but limits that. And there's a handful of lists. Check out chapter 8 for the handbook of things they can't pay. Technically up until recently, buyer broker agency, anything to agents was a part of that. And there is a circular, which is not a permanent amendment, but a temporary amendment allowing that to be paid in some markets.
Yep.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. LOL. Sweet. Other benefits I'm going to throw in here. It is assumable. And we are going to do a whole section on assumables. I have done well over a dozen of these things. And this is my favorite thing about the VA loan. Any other benefits that we can think of just offhand?
So another thing on closing costs, with the VA loan, you can use your closing costs to pay down debt in order to qualify for a loan. So if you're able to negotiate additional closing costs from a seller and or a builder, that can be used in order to qualify, paying down debt, all kinds of different things outside of the transaction.
Everyone knows that, but also seller credit can pay for that. And the seller credit max is not 4%. That's a whole nother conversation. That requires a lot of math. But my favorite thing about the VA loan is that the credit guidelines are the easiest to qualify. I have qualified people with 505s, repos in their car, things that it is the most common sense loan. So if you find a lender that turned down a veteran, try again.
Yeah, if you find a veteran that's been turned down because of DTI, the VA doesn't have DTI requirements. They do residual income requirements, which is a simple math. Simple math. You just take all you take all the outgoing, subtract it from the incoming, and that's it. And they do have a specific range you want to be in. A lot of the lenders will put overlays for DTI because that's just how they think in general when it comes to this stuff. But that actually makes it more simpler because they're better qualified because they include everything, where DTI for say FHA and conventionals, they don't always include everything. So they're actually better qualified overall because the VA requires that they include everything, subtract it all from the incoming, and there you go.
Yeah.
No
Alyssa
minimum
said,
credit score. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Alyssa said 500 residual income, which is a chart, and no lates in 12 months is a simple way it's usually going to. So yeah, hella benefits, right? This is, and you could really kind of go on and on as you continue to compare them. Before I erase this, can we get thumbs up from everybody? Any questions? Any last, multifamily. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. We need to add that. So, what can the VA loan be used for? We just said it can be used for multifamily up to a fourplex. So it can be it can be a single family home, it could be a duplex, obviously triplex, and then up to fourplex. And that is a killer. So I go back to like my story down in New Mexico. Not that I was really in the mindset of like, I'm going to buy a duplex, but like I could have bought a duplex, rented out the other side. That is a totally valid way to go about business. Alyssa says limit changes for the different unit numbers. Ooh, can you just give a brief, and if you don't know the numbers off the top of your head, that's fine, but
I definitely don't know the numbers, but I think that off the top of my head, but just like we went with the loan moment, each unit type has a different loan number. So 2 units is like, I think 1.2. I don't memorize those, but it's the same way. So you get more for it. And you can use rental income to qualify.
Yeah, which is super, super awesome. And then Rick said condos. Did you have anything specific to say on that, Rick?
No, not really. We're just in a beach market, and I know condos qualify for VA. So we have people that buy a condo, live in it for a year, and then when they PCS out, they just use it as rental income.
Yep. Yeah. And the the one thing that I do know about condos, because we don't have a lot of condos here, but that is something that you have to make sure that the condos, I can't remember the word, that the condo basically is, I don't want to say approved. Yeah, VA approved. Is that the right terminology?
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy to see that. You can go on to the VA's website and you can type
I just added the link for you guys.
What a legend. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think we discussed a
Also-
little bit of this last week too, as well. So
Oh, cool.
Also, you can get a spot approval for VA.
And a
Or
waiver.
that's not called that.
It's a
not
waiver.
called waiver. It's a spot approval on FHA, but it's just because it's not on there doesn't mean don't try.
Sweet.
One
Okay.
more thing to cover, Kyle.
Yeah, hit it.
This is a huge advantage on the operational level that'll help agents with getting VA offers accepted. And I deal with it regularly on VA, is the appraisal. When you'll deal with a lot of unexperienced agents that are unexperienced in VA, and they're worried about the VA appraisal because for whatever reason, they think that VA appraisals come in low. Not the case. But a great way on agents to address that is, say you're purchasing a home and the appraiser is going to submit an appraisal that's below your contracted price. They don't automatically set that appraisal. They enact something called Tidewater. And what that is, it's a 72-hour period that you can reach out to the appraiser with comparable sales, whatever justification that you feel would warrant that price that you're purchasing the home. And you can get them to reevaluate their appraisal before they make it final. VA is the only one that does that.
Oh, I didn't realize it was the only one that allowed you. Okay.
Yeah,
That's sick. I didn't realize that.
Well, FHA is trying to build Tidewater into their appraisal process.
Yeah.
It's probably going to happen because it's worked so well for VA. What I don't know if the FHA is going to have is the reconsideration of value, which comes after Tidewater. So Tidewater is prior to the appraisal being turned in. Like the appraiser hasn't finished. He's not seeing the numbers that are on the sales price. So he invokes Tidewater. And then if he still doesn't see it and you still have a gap there between the appraisal and the sales price, then the veteran has the option of invoking a reconsideration of value. And that's where things can really change. And that I think works out better most of the time because you're working directly with the VA on that and not with the appraiser. So you can tug at the heartstrings of the VA and show why the veteran needs to purchase his house now.
Yeah, love that. Again, another great reason to have a good lender because they understand and they've communicated with the VA multiple times. And exactly what Andy just said, like the little tugging on the heartstrings of the VA and like, oh, my veteran needs this. Like it works. I've done it with appraisal waivers, like the contingencies. It's like, oh, this has to be fixed. And we've done that with them, got temporary or not temporary, but like non-standard waivers for,
the NPRs. Yeah. You can get waivers for the NPRs as well. Like if it's cosmetic stuff, if it has to do with something with structure, it may be different. But when it's a lot of the cosmetic stuff, which honestly, a lot of it can be, then you can get a waiver for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to say one more thing and then I'm going to erase the screen unless anybody has any other questions. But I actually want to hit this real quick. And this is not VA specific. This is just remember when you are representing buyers, it is very common to, right? Like, I don't know what you guys are seeing in your market. In my market, there's a lot of seller credits that are being offered. So like, in fact, me and my wife are buying a home right now and the house was listed at 650. We offered 650, asked for 15K in concessions. They said, we'll give you 10. We were like, well, we want 15. So we went up to 655 and are still getting the 15. What I am highlighting here is just remember that if you're going to raise the price, a couple things happen, right? If they have a VA funding fee, it starts adding dollars. But even bigger is the house still has to appraise. And if we had gone up and said, we'll give you 675, but we want the concessions, and then the house comes back and because we want 25K in concessions or something wild, and then the house appraises at 650, you're kind of out of luck when you try to make your argument that the house is worth 675. So you still need to make sure that you're offering and staying within that bounds. Otherwise, appraisal gaps come into play and blah, 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 blah. That's a whole nother topic. We don't need to really get into that. I'm going to clear this screen and I want to talk about something that somehow I have a lot of experience in. And again, it's kind of because Colorado Springs is a unique environment because we have 5 military bases here. We have the Air Force Academy, Peterson Space Force Base, Schriever, Fort Carson, which is enormous, and NORAD or Cheyenne Mountain. Yep. So because we have so many here, we got a lot of people that move all the time, a lot of military people. And this we kind of talked about is one of my favorite benefits of the VA loan. It's not wildly applicable everywhere. And what I've also learned is that they're not as easy to find everywhere. So Colorado is a disclosure state. I don't know if that's what affects it, but it makes it very easy for me to see if a loan is assumable, right? And I can actually see like the mortgage history. I can see that even if it's not listed as assumable on the MLS, I can look at the mortgage history and see that the last loan taken out was a VA loan. And so I'll call the listing agent and be like, hey, why is this not up for as an assumable? And sometimes there's good reasons for it, to be honest. And we're going to talk about we're going to talk about the pros, the cons, what it is, how they work. Why would you do it? Why would you not do it? You could literally do an entire class on just assumables. So I will answer as many questions as I can. Number one, what is an assumable loan? An assumable loan, very, very simply, means that you have the opportunity. And for the purposes of argument, technically anybody can assume the loan, but the only way that the veteran will get their entitlement back is if another veteran with entitlement assumes their loan. Okay. So for the rest of this conversation, we're not talking about like civilian Dave down the street trying to assume my loan. That's not happening. We're just talking about veteran to veteran, active duty, whatever. So let's say you have a house and it is 420,000. And let's just say that you owe, so this is your remaining balance. Doesn't matter what you bought it for, technically. And you bought it in 2021. So you have a 2.5% interest rate, killer. And your mortgage payment, we're just going to call it something, give or take $1,900, depending on where you live and taxes and all that stuff. So what is dope is that Truth could move here and take over this loan. He is taking over the remaining balance and he is taking over the existing interest rate and the existing payment exactly as is. That is wild, especially over the last year when interest rates were 6 or 6.5%. The math is absolutely astounding, especially as you get $500,000 plus and you start looking at the math of a 6.5% interest rate versus a 2.5% interest rate. You're all smart people. We don't need to go into all that details, but it's like over $1,000 a month difference, right? It's wild. So how do we do this? Well, I bought the house 2 years ago, so I'm obviously not selling it for $420,000. So I'm just going to use an easy number and say, I am listing my house for $475K. If Truth wants to buy my house, he is now responsible. We'll do this for the equity difference, which is $55K. This is the place, which is kind of what Kelly was asking about earlier, but this is the scenario where you are responsible for the cash difference, right? And it is the difference between the agreed upon sale price and the remaining loan balance. Now, we're not going to like belabor this. Technically, you can get a loan. The loans are subprime. They're not great because a lot of times there's like a minimum. They want, I've seen anecdotally, they want it to be like a $75,000 minimum. It's going to be like prime plus. So you're talking like, it could be like 8%, 9%, which is really, really sucky. And it's exactly that. You're basically asking a lender to accept being in second position. And there ain't many that are going to do that without charging you for it. And by the way, the math ends up being really sucky anyway. in most cases. This is not blanket. It is just like, I wouldn't just be like, oh, well, it's a $150,000 gap. I'll just take out a loan for it. And it ends up being at 8 or 9%, $150,000. That's going to be, I would guess that payment is somewhere in like the $1,700 a month. Like that would be crazy. And so it would almost negate the whole point of having that assumable loan anyway, right? So this is key. This becomes a cash difference. For the sake of not going into too many rabbit holes, we're just going to consider that that's how that's done. Okay. This is baller. Now, how do we find these? That's always the first question. Clients always want to know, how do we find these? I will tell you how we find them in my market. And if you cannot do this in your market, I would engage with your MLS to make it so. When I fill out, so I just sold an assumable recently, and in the MLS, when I'm filling out the whole data sheet or whatever, there is a box that says VA assumable ? And I say yes. And then it populates a couple other boxes and it asks for these exact questions. It asks for the remaining balance. It asks for the interest rate. It asks for the payment. And it also asks for technically, like, what does the payment include? In like almost every scenario, people just look at their bank statement or their mortgage statement, sorry. And so it's just PITI. This is the information that you need to service this thing. I would actually argue that you really need one more piece of information, and that is, you need to know who is the loan servicer. So before I continue on, this is what you need to know. I have run this survey like 1,000 times. Because the one of the caveats with the assumable loan is that these do not close quick in 98% of scenarios. Is FMLS Florida MLS?
No, it's Georgia.
Oh, okay. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So who is servicing the loan really, really matters. And so this is why sometimes sellers might advise their VA clients to not list it as assumable, because the standard is like 75 to 90 days. Almost everybody that I've worked with, it is like 75 to 90 days to close this deal. Now, should it take 75 to 90 days? Hell no. It's literally this simple. Hey, Alyssa, do you want to buy my house? Yeah, Kyle, I do. Sweet. These are the terms. Do you understand the terms? Do you qualify? Yes, yes. Okay, sign here. That's it. By the way, will you release Kyle's eligibility or his entitlement? Yeah, sure. That's literally it. But somehow it takes 90 days. Now, not important. Why does it take so long? It's really because a lot of these loan servicers, they actually don't really have departments for this. They're just existing to like service the loan. And so they haven't really built it up. Now, you would have thought that over the last 2 years that they would have, but they also really don't make money on these. It doesn't really matter. It's infuriating. That's all you need to know. It is so annoying, but it's worth it because you walk out of there with a 2.5 or 2.25. We almost bought one 2 years ago, year and a half ago. It was at 1.87%. That's bananas, right? So there's a huge benefit there. I will tell you straight out the gate, if the loan servicer is Mr. Cooper, don't do it because it will take 6 months. If it is Freedom Mortgage, 6 months. Very sucky. I don't know of any others that take that long. United Wholesale Mortgage is like 90 days plus. They can be anywhere between 90 and 180 days, which is bananas, right? This will be the only kind thing you will ever hear me say about Veterans United. Veterans United will service these things in 30 days. You will close a VA assumable in 30 days. And in fact, the one that I did in May, It was one that I believe Veterans United had initially, like the loan had originally gone through them, and then they sold it off to Mr. Cooper. And their agreement with Mr. Cooper was, if this gets assumed, we will service it for you. So when we saw that it was with Mr. Cooper, and we were like, oh, there's no way we're doing that. And then they're like, wait. It'll be through VU. So it'll be in 30 days. That's bananas. We had like a local credit union here that also did it in under 30 days. It was like 21. So it is what it is, for what it's worth. That is the other big piece of it. If this is not in your MLS, if it is not in your MLS, this is what I did up in Denver. In Denver, it'll tell you that it's assumable, but then none of this information was there, which was so annoying, because then you have to call the agent and be like, hey, I see that your house is assumable. Can you give me, I need all the information. It's dumb. So I just hit up a couple agents up there, and we all basically sent the same email, and we were like, hey, goofballs, can you add these fields and make it known that we're adding these fields, so that when people add assumable loans, they can throw that super useful information on there. That you can do that. So hit up your MLS if it's not there. Rick said that's how theirs is. Georgia MLS, sweet. Cool. So cons, we really talked about. The major con is the timeline. The timeline can be 90 days plus. So keep that in mind when you're advising sellers or buyers. I've done some weird things, so I'll come back to that. I've done some weird things with longer timelines, totally off the record. And then you have to have that cash difference. And then the other thing is, no kidding, the headache involved is bananas. Now, major recommendation. If your client tells you, I have $50,000 that I could put down. And then I say, when we say 50,000, that's like, because every client does this. They're like, I mean, I could do probably like 63. That is a major indication to me that we are not going to find one that is $63,000 for a gap, because that makes no sense. You're not going to push it, because there are closing costs involved. There is still a VA funding fee involved if they don't have disability, right? If they're not exempt. And by the way, if it takes 3 months and it was like $62,000, what's happening is the seller is still paying down that mortgage over that 3 months. Okay. One more that, like, I don't know if I would call it a con. It's just be aware, right? So like, my wife and I close on our house next week. And as you guys know, our first payment is not until October, which is awesome. Like, that's so great. When you assume a loan, you pick up the next payment immediately. So you have to be aware of that. And it's going to be basically the payment and prorated, right? Yeah, there's definitely costs involved with the VA loan, per what Byron just said. So it can be a massive headache, because when it takes that long, like, you will send in multiple verifications of employment. We had a lender that was like, oh, we need another bank statement, because they want like your previous 30 days, and now it's been 90 days. And it's like, we've already verified that. And they're like, yeah, but that one's expired. So it becomes a big headache for the clients. Sometimes when it's like, they almost like lose the excitement about the house. You're like, let's just go walk through the house again, because I promise you'll love it. You just have to understand this about assumables and how they work. But again, there's a monstrous benefit that you can walk into 2.5%, 3%. One more thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you this strategy that we did with a client. And this was, I was pretty proud of myself for coming up with this, if I'm being honest. So I had a client that was moving out here from St. Louis. They were selling their house out there. They had in cash, they had 120K. But this man, great dude named John, he works in the utilities. So he doesn't make like a ton of money. And he was moving out here about a year ago. And he was like, he wanted to put 100,000 down or all 120. but he wanted to put like 100K down. And then he wanted his payment when interest rates were like 6.5%. He wanted his payment to be no more than $1,300 a month. In Colorado Springs, that basically doesn't exist, right? Like, unless you're living in a double wide. And that literally became part of the conversation. Now, why is that a problem? Is because he's married and he has 2 little girls that are getting ready to start school. And, you know, you can do the math. Where does that end up putting you? What school districts is that in? And he was just kind of like willing to accept that. Well, this goofball didn't tell me that he was a veteran until like some random conversation one day. He was like, no, I am a veteran. And I was like, how have you not told me this? And I was like, well, check this out. You are a prime candidate for an assumable loan. So we started running this math and I was like, what if we could not put 120K down? What if we put down, so basically I made this spreadsheet. It was this like calculator. So we could throw in like the top 3 or 4 houses that they liked, and then all of this data into the spreadsheet, because what I wanted to show him was, what if we take that 120K, what if we put, I'm just going to use easy numbers for easy math. What if we only put 70K down and we still have 50K in our possession, but the house that we're looking at, maybe the payment is $1,900 a month. Well, that's $600 difference. How long does that 50K stretch, right? That 50K stretches a long way, but at least you have control of it. And so you're not stressed about this $1,300 a month. Like, I have to be there, because it's like, no, you actually are holding on to your own cash so that you could do that. And then we calculated out, and basically, like, I don't know what the math is right now, but let's just say that ends up lasting like, 10 years or something like that. And then the other great thing is like, yeah, dude, you also have your 50K. So like, did you want to put a new carpet in this house? Okay, let's take that like 8 to 10K out of there that would already be gone. Kyle is a fan of having cash on hand if I can have cash on hand. And me being the adjudicator of where, good word, the adjudicator of where my cash is going to go. So this is almost exactly how it worked out, actually. Was they ended up putting 70-ish down. They had like 50K in reserves. And then we hammered them on inspection. And then while they were cleaning something up, they messed up the floor. And so they replaced the whole floor for free. It was baller. Anyway, and we were able to use that 50K so that they had a little bit higher payment, way better school district, an actual, like a super cute house with a really nice yard. And it was like, you see like the quality of life change that was possible because of the assumable loan. Because now they're not in a double wide, like trailer park, no kidding. And they're actually able to be in like a super cute neighborhood. They're super happy. They love their neighbors. They love where they're at. Their girls are in school now. This is brilliant. So I see that Gene just posted Assume List. I have not looked at Assume List. I'm going to tell you, if it's not in your market, other places that you can look. There's a couple websites like this that you can search assumable loans. One of them is, I'm going to type it in here. It is withrome.com. Here is where I will counsel you with a word of caution. A lot of these, like with Rome, for example, they want to charge you 1% of the purchase price to, they're not even like doing transaction coordination. They're not even running the assumable for you. I literally don't even know what they're doing, but people see them on there, and the data is sometimes accurate and sometimes it's not updated. I don't know how they get their data, but I've seen numbers that were just like not even right, like purchase prices and stuff. But they're fine places to search. And if your consumer, your buyer, wants to search, it's a fine place to search. But that's pretty much the limit of how I would use those websites. And if you can get them, if you can lobby your MLS and get this as a part of your MLS, you will have done more for your MLS than like any realtor in history. Because adding this data there is, it's so huge. So I have like a search tab that is just saved as assumables. And even here, where, you know, we have like 2,500 homes on the market. We'll have like maybe 250 assumables. And then of those 250, maybe 5 of them meet your client's criteria, right? Because of the size of the down payment that they have, the location, the specs of the house. So it's a killer strategy. They can be difficult. My wife and I, we literally looked for like 8 or 9 months because we were looking for a very, very specific thing, and it just didn't come up. And we ended up just buying another property, regular, you know, on the market recently. So that was a mouthful. That was a lot. We went over a lot of things. There are still, I have a list of so many more. We didn't even talk about some, you know, what somebody said earlier, where it's like the VA loan is not free to do. It costs money. We didn't even talk about funding fees and the strategies there. We didn't talk about renovations. We didn't talk about building with it. I mean, there's still so many topics. So this will not be the last myth busting. This won't be the last like lesson on the VA loan, but hopefully this was valuable. I'm happy to stick on for a few more minutes. We are going to have a part 2 very, very soon. I don't know if it'll be next week. Any parting shots, questions, comments, concerns, hallucinations?
Yeah, I'm
Victoria,
still trying to get.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my guy from the Atlanta RLC that's over construction evaluation. Trying to get him on one of these calls. So
that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. Yeah. I don't know if people are popping off or if they're getting kicked out or whatever, but any other questions, comments, concerns, hallucinations? Thank you guys for showing up. Thanks for participating. That felt, hopefully, this is like how we want to go forward. That felt to me a little bit more like a mastermind. Yes, I was leading it, but like the input was so valuable. And that's what we want people to know, that when they come into these, that they're going to hear from a lot of experts, right? And we're going to be able to build and make this community really, really awesome. So thank you guys for showing up. Appreciate you. It'll be in the, we'll post the recording in Workplace. If you have fellow military or people that are in the real military division that were not here, send them this link from Workplace once it's posted, and just say, hey, this is an hour of your time that I think is very much worth it, because we need to make sure that our skills are sharp. So that would be my invitation to everybody, is to share this video with at least one person that wasn't here today that you know that could benefit. And feel free to reach out to me. Again, I am not Renee Zunker. I'm Kyle Petitt. Thank you guys. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it, man.